Chapter 1. The New Gig. Jack's boots sank half an inch into the muck as he stepped out of his truck. The lot outside the Rusted Nail was nothing but churned dirt and the sour stench of wet leaves. Above him, the bar's neon sign flickered a sickly green, buzzing like a dying insect. Half the letters were burnt out, so it just read, Rusted Nail. Perfect, he thought. Just perfect. The town of Dagger's Hollow had looked deserted even before sundown. A couple of gas stations, a boarded-up diner, a church that leaned sideways like it was giving up. Now, under a low, choking mist, it felt like he had crossed into somewhere he shouldn't be, somewhere that hadn't had a real heartbeat in years. Jack pulled his coat tighter and crossed the lot. His breath hung in the air, thin and yellow under the flickering light. When he pushed open the bar's door, a wave of sour beer, sweat, and something like old meat hit him in the face. Inside, the Rusted Nail was a long, narrow tomb of bad wood and worse lighting. Tables sagged under their own weight. A few locals hunched at the bar, faces half hidden by hats and greasy hair. They barely looked up. Behind the bar, a woman with gray-streaked hair and skin like cracked leather gave him a look that was somewhere between welcome and get the hell out. "Jack?" she rasped. He nodded. "You're late." "Roads were flooded," Jack said. It wasn't a lie. Some parts of the highway had looked like the swamp was reclaiming them. The woman tossed him a black T-shirt with the bar's name, spelled correctly this time, stretched across the chest. "You work the door. Keep out the riffraff. No fights." "Seems quiet enough," Jack said, glancing around. One of the locals at the bar chuckled under his breath, a dry, phlegmy sound. "Quiet now," the woman said. She jerked her chin toward the front entrance. "Post up." Jack settled onto a stool by the door. The bar hummed with low voices and the occasional clink of a glass. Every so often, he'd catch someone staring at him, their eyes flat and unblinking, until he looked directly at them. Then they'd turn away, too fast, like they'd been caught peeking into something private. The mist outside pressed against the windows like a living thing, shapes twisted through it, vague, writhing things just out of focus. Jack rubbed his eyes, but the shapes stayed. "Don't mind that," a voice said. Jack turned. One of the locals had shuffled closer, a man with a face so lined and pitted it looked more like bark than flesh. His teeth, when he smiled, were gray stumps. "Sometimes the hollow plays tricks," the man said. His voice was wet, like something drowning. "Best not to look too hard." Jack managed a tight nod and turned his gaze back to the door. His hands itched for a cigarette, but the woman behind the bar had already barked "no smoking" the moment he'd stepped in. Hours passed like syrup dripping down a wall. A few more patrons slipped in, each one dragging more of the outside in with them. Mud on their boots, stink on their coats, eyes too wide or too empty. Jack caught himself counting the seconds between each blink just to stay awake. Then the front door rattled. Not a knock. A sharp, urgent shake, like something was trying to get in. The bar fell silent. Every head turned toward the door. Jack stood up slowly. Another rattle. Harder. More frantic. The door bucked in its frame. Jack reached for the handle. "Don't," the woman behind the bar barked. He froze. The door stopped shaking. Silence seeped back into the room, thick and unnatural. Jack backed away, feeling the eyes of every patron burning into him. No one said a word, no one explained. The moment passed, and the bar went back to its low hum of murmured voices, like nothing had happened. Jack sat back down, heart hammering in his chest. Outside, in the mist, something brushed against the window. Long, spidery fingers. They dragged across the glass, slow and deliberate, leaving streaks behind that refused to fade. Jack tightened his fists until his knuckles cracked. Welcome to Dagger's Hollow, he thought. The worst part was, he couldn't shake the feeling he'd been expected. Chapter 2. Rules They Don't Tell You. The next night, the sky above Dagger's Hollow bruised into a deep, festering purple. Jack showed up 10 minutes early, half hoping no one would be there. The rusted nail loomed against the mist like a tumor on the landscape. Inside, the bar smelled worse, staler, like something had died and nobody had bothered to notice. The woman, Marlene, he'd finally learned, was wiping the same spot on the counter with a rag that looked older than Jack. She didn't greet him, just tossed her chin toward the door. "Remember," she said without looking up, "no matter what you hear, you don't open that back door." "The one by the alley?" Jack asked. She nodded. 100? You don't want to know. That should have been enough. It should have. Jack posted up by the door again, watching the hollow-eyed patrons drift in. Some shuffled like their joints didn't work right. Others moved too smoothly, too fluid, like they barely touched the ground. They never looked him in the eye for long. Not unless they wanted to. Halfway through the night, Jack caught movement out of the corner of his eye. The back door, the one Marlene warned him about, trembled in its frame. Soft at first, then more violently, like something was throwing its weight against it. Jack moved toward it on instinct. A sound rose from the other side. Scraping, whispering, not words exactly, just the wet, desperate noise of things that shouldn't have voices. The hair on Jack's arms lifted. He froze, a foot away from the handle. "Don't," came a voice behind him. It was one of the regulars, the bark-skinned old man from the night before. "Rules are rules," the man said. His breath reeked of sour milk and rot. "Once you let 'em in, you can't send 'em back." The door bucked again. Jack saw the handle twist. Just slightly. Just enough to say, "We're here." He backed off. The doors stilled. Silence returned. The regular nodded once, satisfied, and shuffled away. Jack sat back down, heart a fist beating against his ribs. Later, as the bar thinned out and Marlene began stacking chairs, Jack gathered the nerve to ask, "What's behind that door?" Marlene stopped. Her face tightened, deep lines carving deeper. "Not what," she said quietly. "Who?" Jack waited, but she said no more. That night, driving home, Jack kept checking his rearview mirror. He swore he saw something clinging to the back of his truck. A shape, long-limbed, grinning. When he whipped around, there was nothing. Nothing but the mist curling hungrily across the cracked road. Chapter 3. The Hollow Stirs. Jack woke up to the sound of something tapping against his window. Sharp, insistent. He lay there in the dark of his rented trailer, holding his breath, listening. Up, tap. He grabbed the tire iron he kept by the bed and crept to the window. Drew back the curtain. Nothing. Just mist rolling across the empty field beyond the trailer park, thick enough to choke on. It blanketed the world, deadened the world, left him staring into a suffocating nothingness. When he turned away, he caught a glimpse, a shadow that wasn't his own, sliding along the wall, smiling without a mouth. Jack didn't sleep after that. The rusted nail was different that night. Harsher, meaner. Jack felt it the moment he stepped through the door. The air inside buzzed like a nest of hornets. The patrons moved strangely, their faces twisting when they thought no one was looking. One woman at the bar, young, maybe 20s, turned to him and grinned. Her teeth were too many, rows and rows packed into a mouth that split her cheeks open at the corners. Jack looked away, heart pounding. When he dared glance back, she was sipping her drink like nothing had happened. Marlene leaned in close when he passed her. Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice raw. "Tonight's bad," she muttered. "The Hollow's awake." "What the hell does that mean?" Jack hissed. "Means you keep your damn head down, you hear?" Jack nodded, throat dry. He took his place at the door. Hours dragged by, the fog outside thickening, pressing against the glass so hard the windows bowed inward. Shapes roamed in it, tall and thin, moving wrong, jerky and fluid all at once. A man stumbled in around midnight, coat torn and eyes wide with terror. Blood painted one side of his face. "Help!" he rasped, reaching toward Jack. Before Jack could react, two of the locals, the bark-faced old man and another with skin the color of old parchment, grabbed him, dragged him, kicking and screaming, through a side door Jack hadn't even noticed before. The bar went back to normal. No one spoke of it. No one even seemed to care. Jack sat there, stunned, a buzzing growing behind his eyes. He started noticing more things after that. How some of the regulars seemed to flicker at the edges like static on a broken TV. How the mirrors behind the bar reflected things that weren't there. Patrons with heads twisted backward, eyeless sockets grinning at him. He found a stack of newspapers in the back room during a smoke break. Old, yellowed things from decades ago. Headlines screamed about missing persons, whole families vanishing overnight, strange lights in the woods. Always in Dagger's Hollow. Always around this time of year. Jack thumbed through them, heart hammering faster with each page. The dates lined up too neatly. Every 5 years, the Hollow stirred. Every 5 years, something got out. And something hungry. He slammed the papers back into the box and lit a cigarette with shaking hands, not caring if Marlene saw. Outside, the mist thickened, swirling into shapes that almost looked human. Jack squinted into the gloom. Thought he saw someone standing out there, just beyond the lot. It looked like him. Exactly like him. Smiling. Jack dropped the cigarette and stamped it out, rubbed his eyes until they burned. When he looked again, the thing was gone. But the mist was still there, creeping closer, wrapping around the rusted nail like a lover who had waited too long. Chapter 4. Through the Door. The third night, Jack almost didn't show up. He sat in his truck for half an hour, engine idling, staring at the bar through the crawling mist. The rusted nail pulsed like a rotten heart in the darkness, the neon sign flickering in and out of existence. Something in him said, "Run. Drive until the mist peeled away and the stars returned." But Jack had never been the running kind. He slammed the door and trudged across the lot, boots sucking at the mud. Inside, the bar was quieter than usual. No conversations, no clinking glasses. Just the low, wet sound of breathing. Everyone turned when he entered. Their faces were wrong, too long, too thin. Their mouths hung open slightly, as if tasting the air. Marlene wasn't behind the bar. Instead, a tall man with paper-pale skin and a too-wide grin wiped the counter with slow, deliberate strokes. His eyes gleamed black under the dim lights. Jack took his post without a word. Minutes, maybe hours, crawled by. Jack didn't check his watch. Time felt slippery here, stretching and folding over itself like the mist outside. The back door creaked. He stiffened. A knock. Soft. Measured. Then another. Jack stared at the door, heart rattling in his chest. "Jack!" A voice whispered from the other side. His own voice. "Jack, you left me out here." The whisper became pleading, became begging, became rage. "Let me in." The locals didn't move. They watched him, silent and still, their bodies buzzing faintly at the edges like static. Jack's hand moved of its own accord, reaching for the handle. The metal was ice against his palm. Ages worth of pen and a 3-foot credenza. The door swung open onto a blackness so complete it swallowed the weak light from the bar. Cold air rushed in, reeking of damp earth and something sweeter, fouler. Decay dressed up as perfume. Out of the darkness, a figure stepped forward. It was him, but twisted. Taller, thinner, bones too sharp under the skin, smile splitting his face from ear to ear. Its eyes were pits, deep and writhing, with tiny, wriggling things. Jack stumbled back. The thing mirrored him perfectly, step for step, grinning all the while. The Patreons didn't react, didn't move. The Jathing tilted its head, cracking vertebrae one by one, then whispered, "Come home." Jack bolted. Not for the front door. It was gone, swallowed by mist. But toward the alley, toward escape. The world outside had changed. The lot was a swamp of sinking black water. Dead trees clawed at the sky. And in the distance, barely visible through the mist, he saw buildings, sagging, crumbling. The true Dagger's hollow, forgotten, dead, left to rot. And something was moving among the ruins, watching him, calling him. Driven by something he couldn't name, Jack stumbled toward it. Chapter 5. The Final Bouncer. Jack stumbled through the ruins of the true Dagger's hollow, lungs burning, heart pounding a brutal rhythm against his ribs. The mist clung to him like wet gauze, thickening with each step, whispering in voices that sounded like his own. Buildings sagged inward, roofs collapsed, windows shattered like open mouths screaming into the void. The streets were a graveyard of memories. Rusted bikes, broken toys, rotted furniture half swallowed by weeds. No signs of life, just the endless, watching mist. Behind him, the Jack thing followed, patient, smiling. Jack staggered into the hollowed shell of an old church. The door hung on one hinge, swinging and creaking with every breath of the mist. Inside, a circle of blackened candles surrounded a pit in the floor, a hole gnawed into the earth, pulsing like a wound. Around the pit, more figures waited. Some wore scraps of human skin. Others had faces peeled into grotesque parodies of smiles. All of them watched Jack with hollow, hungry eyes. Marlene stood among them. Or what was left of her. Her body sagged, hollowed out, her mouth a dark, yawning gash. "We need you," she croaked, voice like dry leaves scraping over stone. "The hollow needs you." Jack backed away, but hands, cold, skeletal, gripped his arms, his shoulders, dragged him toward the pit. "One of us," they whispered. "One of us." Jack fought, kicked, bit down on a hand until blood thick and black filled his mouth. He broke free, stumbling toward the church door. The hollows screamed behind him, a sound of rage, of hunger denied. Jack ran. Through the ruins, through the choking mist, back toward the rusted nail. When he burst through the bar's door, everything was wrong. The patrons had changed. No longer pretending. Their skins hung loose, their eyes burned with hollow light. They stood in rows, facing the door, waiting. The Jachting stepped in behind him, grinning. Jack grabbed a bottle from the bar, smashed it against the counter, and lit it with his lighter, a crude, desperate Molotov. "Burn," he growled, throwing it into the crowd. The fire caught instantly, racing up the walls, swallowing the warped bodies. The rusted nails screamed as it burned, the sound not wood but flesh, not heat but hunger. Jack stumbled outside, coughing, the mist retreating from the flames. For a moment, he thought he had won. Then he saw them, figures walking calmly through the fire, unbothered, smiling their hollow smiles. And behind them, the hollow itself, a massive, shifting thing of mist and shadow and teeth rising from the burning ruins. Jack stood his ground. No running now. He cracked his knuckles, wiped blood from his mouth, and smiled back. "Come on, Nick," he whispered. The mist swallowed him whole.